I'm Mario Martinez Jr., CEO and founder of Ingresso, and we are the creators of flymessage.io, the free personal writing assistant and text expander application. On each episode of this podcast, you will hear from sales leaders, practitioners, and influencers to help you grow your sales numbers at scale. So, get your pen and paper or iPad and keyboard and start taking notes as you're now listening to the Modern Selling Podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this episode of the Modern Selling Podcast. And I couldn't be more excited here to bring you my next guest, who is going to be with me talking all about blowing up an organization and a company and the journey and culture and what we've got to do to be able to grow a company from nothing to something without taking any VC money, which is pretty exciting. A journey that I very much aspire to be. So do me a favor and welcome to the show, Mr. Manoj Ramnani from Sales Intel. He is the CEO and founder. Manoj, welcome, man.
Hey, thank you, Mario. Happy to be here, and thank you for the opportunity.
You bet. And I don't know if I told you this, but something very interesting right now for those of you watching video, if you are listening on audio only, heads up, for the first time in my corporate career and life, and the first time on the Modern Selling Podcast, I am rocking a beard. That's what I'm doing. So everybody who's watching right now, yes, this is actually the first time you've ever seen me with a beard. I've always been
I was going to ask
clean-shaven.
you, something is different. I was going to ask you when you started the podcast here, so now it makes sense. But it looks great on you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. I'm looking at it and I say, I got some patches going on over here, but I'm working with the patches.
Those are patches of wisdom.
I love it, man. Well, for all of you listening in, go to the video on our YouTube channel and take a look at what I look like. And hey, you tell me, does it work? Manoj, let's spend some time talking about you. Do me a favor, give us a little background about yourself and about what Sales Intel does. And then I've got a very special question for you.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Manoj Ramnani, founder and CEO of Sales Intel. A bit about me. I'm here in Washington, D.C. metro area. Very few companies. Mostly you hear about SaaS companies in Silicon Valley, Boston, New York. Nope, we are building it right here in the capital of United States of the country. Sales Intel, what do? We provide data and intelligence in a SaaS solution for go-to-market teams so that they can build a strong pipeline, so that they can go and increase their win rate, so that they can go and increase the account size that they have, so that they can go and use our data and intelligence to do their planning for the year, right?
So as an example, if I'm looking for data, mobile number, email on prospect A, B, or C in an organization, I would use Sales Intel to be able to find that data, yeah?
Yeah. But that comes almost as a third stage. Go-to-market teams use Sales Intel platform for planning purposes. Who's their ICP? Who's their ideal customer profile, right? So in our data stack, we have 5 layers of data. They use our company firmographic data and technographic data to figure out who's their ideal customer profile. Then they use our intent data to see who within those companies in their ICP is in the market today. Because, we all have limited bandwidths. We all have limited resources. So we want to focus our energy and our entire go-to-market team's energy and resources behind the accounts that are in the market today, that are showing some indications, some signals that they are looking for a solution that we provide or a service that we provide. And then the third stage is, okay, now within those accounts that are in my ICP and are in market, give me the decision makers' contact information so that I can engage with them on email, on phone call, on social.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Manoj, but I know I met you many years ago, and this is when you first started building out Sales Intel, and we've always stayed in contact. But what I admired most about you was that this isn't your first time at the rodeo. Aren't you a fourth-time founder?
That's right. This is my fourth company. I've been very fortunate to have, 3 companies before that with various degrees of success and failures, right? Looking back, you learn more from your failures than from your successes, right? But we have an amazing team here. There's a product market fit, over 1,000 customers. So, we are happy and excited about building this business in the market that we are in.
Fantastic. Now, I always ask all my guests a very special question, and so you're no different, but I'm looking for something juicy. Manoj, you got to give it to me, man. And that is, tell us something nobody knows about you, even if they're looking at any or all of your social profiles.
Yeah, so let's see. Oh, really? I'm a pilot. I don't think I put it out there, but I'm a recreational pilot. I love flying. One of the thought that I had this year is to fly across country and meet with all our prospects, our partners, our clients. So hopefully, this summer or maybe late spring, early summer, we start that journey. But you're the first one to know now.
Interesting. So do you have your own plane?
Yes, I do have my plane.
Okay. All right. Now, are we talking about Donald Trump style plane, or are we talking about a smaller plane?
It's a smaller plane. You don't need Donald Trump like plane unless you are,
Donald Trump.
You're Donald Trump, or you're contesting for the office, right? And somebody else is paying for the plane. No, it's a small plane, 4-seater. So I fly Cirrus SR-22.
Wow, interesting. So whenever you go, can you do this over international waters or only domestically?
No, just it depends on what's international, right? If you're going from here to Caribbean islands, then you take a hop over in Miami, and then you can go to, Turks and Caicos, for example. But no, you can't take this plane from here to Europe, for example.
Okay, all right. So it depends on the distance and how much gas you need.
Exactly. Give or take 4 hours at 200 knots an hour.
Okay, all right. Now, I've never, first off, I've never known anybody who had their own plane, and cool that you are a pilot. So tell me, do you have to coordinate with the airports? I assume so, that you're coming in and when you can arrive and leave?
It's actually much easier than you think, right? It takes less than a minute, right, to file your plan, right? And you'll be amazed to know like how many smaller airports are there where you can just land, right? If you're going from here to, let's just say Florida, right? You probably take a hop over in between, but you don't go to Miami International Airport, right? There's so many smaller strips that you can land.
Got it. Okay. All right. Well, that reminds me of right here in my backyard, we have Concord, California, that has its own airplane or its own airport, and it's no commercial airlines fly into there. So it's much smaller for sure. Okay. So when you're flying yourself, generally you're flying to these smaller airports, if you would, and flying into those locations.
That's correct. That is correct. You can go to a bigger airport, right? You can go and they'll give you permission, but there's no need.
Got it. Roger that. Interesting. All right. Well, you have to tell me how that process works. I've never had the desire to fly my own plane, but one day that that would be kind of cool to be able to do that myself. But like, let's just go. We'll travel wherever we need to go when we need to do it.
Let's do it. Next time I'm in San Francisco and have couple days, we'll rent a plane there, and I'll take you up. We'll go to Napa Valley or somewhere else.
Oh, that would be quite cool. That would be
go to LA from there. It'd be fun to go to LA.
Yeah, that would be a nice hop, skip, and a jump. We'll visit some of your customers.
Yeah, let's do it.
Fantastic. All right. Well, let's get into some good content today. And, first off, I've always admired what you've done in terms of building Sales Intel out as a fourth-time founder. And interestingly enough, doing it without any venture capital funding. And so congratulations to you on your accomplishments, because that's a big thing to build an organization of your size without any type of funding, and you've totally bootstrapped it, and for very strategic reasons for that. But a lot of success comes from really driving in the importance of team culture, yeah? And making sure that you've got the right people at the right place at the right time with the right attitude and the right focus and the right drive to accomplish what it is that the founder or founders want. And that's hard. That's hard to do. So You built 4 companies. Talk about some of the lessons that you learned in learning how to build a team culture. And by the way, maybe it's helpful for people to understand, how large is Sales Intel? How many employees do you have?
Yeah, sure. So let's see, there are a couple of questions in there. So Sales Intel, we are we have offices here. When I say offices, folks work virtually. We do have office in Washington D.C. area. So we are just around 100 here in US. Sub 100 here in US. We have folks in Europe, and then we have a large team in India. Right, as you know, we pride ourselves of having the highest quality data, and the quality comes from machine doing its own magic with AI and ML algorithms, but then the last mile of that being verified by the researchers, right? So we have about 400 or so researchers in our office in India. When you combine all that, you're about 500 folks, but except the research team, about 150 of us in the product development, software, sales, marketing, go-to-market teams, and business operations. Right, so about 150 folks in our team. Look, every time you think that you got the art of building the company, then there's a new challenge, because every company comes with a different challenge. You're in different markets, you're different, with different teams, different people, different business models. But one thing that is kind of common across the board, that building business is a team sport, right? I tell this thing to everybody, to my team, my investors, my customers, everybody. Building business is a team sport, right? If I was a pianist, I'll do it all by myself, right? Much less coordination. It's just me, right? If I had to put 15 hours to play piano and be perfect at it, probably would be easier. But when you have to have bunch of folks coming together, and these are, you need A players that are independent thinker, that take the ownership, they have their own thoughts and opinions, right? To get them all coming together, that's the hardest part of building any business, right? So how do you build it? We have a little bit of success. There are many founders who have had much bigger successes than I've had. So happy to share what I have learned, right? It's all about the people, number one. And when I say building business is a team sport, it's a sport, right? Because you're there to play and you're playing to win. And in order to win, you need the A players. And in just like any sport, you want to make sure that there are rules, right? And imagine playing football without any rules, right? It won't go very well. Same thing, building businesses, you need rules. And those rules are nothing but the cultural pillars, right? And every company has different cultural pillars. We have our own. And you continue to tweak those pillars as the company matures from 0 to 5 million, 5 to 10 million, 10 to $100 million, right? So at the end of the day, it's all about the team. It's all about setting the right, I call it rules, the cultural values. In my first company, I wish we had understood the importance of culture. We never talked about it. We never thought this was a thing, right? In my second company, we halfway through that, we said, what? In order to grow, we need to have a culture. So at Sales Intel, day one of Sales Intel was all about our cultural values, right? What is it that we want to practice every single day, right? It's about, we picked customer at the center of everything that we do, right? Because it's not the CEO, it's not the VC that pays the paycheck, right? That pays the bill. It's the customer. So everybody needs to have that lens of customer, right? Keep the customer, whether you're developing a product, whether you're selling, don't sell it to a customer if you can't deliver, right? Don't sell futures, like market to the right customer, not to the entire world. So we kept that as our key pillar. And then it's about, okay, what type of work do we want to do, right? Or do we want to be Steve Jobs, or do we want to be Mark Zuckerberg, right? Because both had different philosophies. Mark Zuckerberg was like, run fast and break things. Steve Jobs was make everything perfect and then release, right? So which philosophy do you take? And we took the progress over perfection, right? So it was like, look, we need to make progress every single day. Don't let perfect be the enemy of good, because we are in a market that is very well established, And I'm no Steve Jobs that has come up with the iPhone that's going to revolutionize the world. So we need to make progress, give the product to the market, learn from the market, iterate, and keep making progress, right? And third thing was, we are in this together. Like, we are growing together. I, as a CEO, I'm growing because I haven't built a, billion-dollar company before. And if our aspirations are to build a billion-dollar company, then I'm going to have to grow, right? Some of the team members that we brought in, we have to give them the opportunity to grow, right? So we get those very, very simple. And those values, those cultural pillars have helped us weather the storms. Like last couple of quarters in our space have been extremely hard. Like the interest rates going up, layoffs, VC money drying up, licenses shrinking. We were able to grow last year. And when I look back, why? It's all about the team. And it's about our culture, north stars of our culture.
So I heard you say people, customer, and doing it together. Did I miss something in between? People, customer, together.
Yeah. And we have this, you're taking accountability, right?
Accountability. So I'm going to throw out an acronym here because I'm a big acronym guy. You develop a pact.
We developed a pact. That's right.
So people, accountability, customer, doing it together.
Doing together. That's right.
So, interesting. Let's talk about everybody, of course, all the sales leaders and sales reps who are listening into this particular call. We talk about growing and scaling. We hope to see that, we grow and scale with the company, that the company actually begins to expand. That means more room for opportunity. But one of the big challenges that I've always seen is when hiring out executive leaders, right? So not everybody takes ownership like the way a founder would take ownership. Not everybody's willing to take the risk to do work, extra hard to really drive accountability into themselves because they don't really have, quote, part of the ownership and philosophy that someone like you and I would subscribe to, which is, hey, if I need to take 24 hours out of a 24-hour day to do something, to get something there, we're going to do it in order to survive to get there. And so I've always found that people struggle with what to look for in an executive. Capabilities, their individual long-term view versus short-term. How do you deal with their willingness to take ownership and to think like a founder, even though they may not be a founder? So can you talk a little bit about what you've learned over the course of time, whether it's with Sales Intel or any other organization? Because I think these principles apply to any sales director hiring a sales manager, or VP, a director, or CRO, a VP, or CEO to a CRO. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, I think make them order. Why not? Like we have lots of companies, or majority of the companies have their, stock option program. Why not use them? Because if you build something together, it's only fair that everybody is part of the success at the end of the day. But that alone is not going to give them the sense of ownership, right? Because more often than not, those stock options end up being worth nothing, right? For many, many companies, because they take too much money from the VCs. There's so many preferences sitting on top. Yes, the company makes a headline that they sold for, $100 million, but when it comes right down to the rank and order, folks, they didn't make much money. That's why we chose the hardest path. We didn't go to any institutional investor. We do have some investment, but mostly from the friends and family, right? So coming to the team members, when you hire, what I look for is, number one is capability. I'm looking for a salesperson. Does this person have the capability to be a strong sales individual contributor or a leader, right? Or not? I think the first thing starts. The second thing, which is hard, is can they live our cultural values, right? Which is hard to judge during the interview process or even through the reference processes, right? And then you look back at their past and see, I always look at, is this guy a stable Sam, or has he been Johnny the jumper, right? So if you see, somebody changing job every 18 months or every 9 months, 10 months, it's a Johnny the jumper. He hasn't stayed at the job. Now, one or two mishaps, you can chalk that bad decision, bad company. But if you see a trend of 3, 4, 5 jobs, every job less than 2 years, then you can kind of draw some conclusion there. Or they have been very stable, right? Because as you and I both know, building businesses is very, very hard, right? Because you're working against all the odds to build something valuable and exit, right? So if you see an executive who has been stable at job and they have had success, that's a very, very positive sign that, hey, they have gone through ups and downs, right? Ups and downs of the market, ups and downs of the investors, ups and downs of the CEO, because not every CEO is easiest to work with. There are many people that will tell you I'm not the easiest person to work with because I ask for a lot, right? So they have figured it out, because there's 10 excuses you can make to change a job, right? But there's only one reason why you should stay, because you want to ultimately win, right? So that tells you a lot. And if the end result is failure, doesn't matter, right? I will still hire them because they've gone through those ups and downs and they failed. So there's lots of lessons that they've learned, right? And then the biggest thing that I look for is, that long-term view, because nothing happens overnight. Like nothing happens overnight. You need to have a little longer term. We don't expect people to stay with us for a decade, right? People don't stay together in a marriage, right? So you can't expect them to stay at a job together. But, give enough time to see things through. And, I've been very fortunate, Mario, that over 2 dozen of our team members here have been with me for, over a dozen years, like over 12 years. Some of them have been 15 years, the third company with me. Some of them have been with me for longer than that, right? So I've been very, very fortunate. Because let's take an example of an AE, right? If you're an AE, you join a company, your ramp up time alone is what, 3, 4, in some cases 5 months. So you're productive for the 7 months. So if everything works in your favor, which marketing generated enough pipeline, you had good pipeline, that your BDR worked out well, you have 60, 70% of chances that you hit your number, right? But you have built in a pipeline that some of those deals that you lost, if you keep the prospects warm, you're starting the next year on a positive note, right? Your chances of hitting the second year goal is much higher, because now you're ramped up, you know the industry, you know your people, you know the pipeline, you have a pipeline from previous close lost, right? And if you get to third year with the same company, your chances of success are 90%, right? Plus, if you're motivated to go up and the company is growing, you will get more opportunities. And that simple concepts, AEs do not learn. They miss a number, they don't want to work hard, they hop to the next job. They do the same thing there, hop to the next job, right? And they never see that break in their life. Right? So, I look for longer term, and I tell people, look, it's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to not hit your number, but come with the learning and the commitment that next year you're going to draw from those learning and put the right amount of work that's needed to hit the numbers, and we will support you. Right? Same thing at the executive level. Right? Executives that have a short-term thinking, right? They don't last. They go from company 1 to 2 to 3, and you see their career over 15 years, they haven't had a hit. Right? I mean, they have not been part of an exit where they had material outcome, because they're just jumping around. Whereas the executives who stay at the business for long enough of a time to see things through, you see they have hit after hit after hit.
I like what you said about you are willing to hire somebody who actually has failed. That's interesting but you also said, as long as they can, I think the words here is they can understand why they failed and learn from that mistake. So that really requires that an individual, whether you're executive, AE, BDR, whatever the case might be, that you've identified what you did that could have made it more successful. Oftentimes, when we hear of those that are the Johnny the Hopper, I think you called it.
You say Johnny the Jumper or Harry the Hopper, you can call them Johnny the Jumper, Harry the Hopper, or stable sands, right? You want to bet on stable sands.
Yeah, when we see Johnny the Jumper, when we asked an individual, like, what happened? Oh, the company was bad or the management was bad. But it's like, did you take the time to reflect? What did you do that didn't work well? And I think about that and I'm like, huh, if I would start out with a conversation that said, let's just say Vingresso, we convert into a SaaS company and in 2 years I fail. And then someone says, hey, you're looking for a job. What happened to Fly Message? What happened to Vingresso? Oh, it just wasn't the right timing. The market was tough. The conversion was really hard. We had employees that left. Right? Like if I started out with that, then it's like, wait a minute, it was everybody else's fault, except I held no accountability to that. And I think that's important that people think about that type of messaging about what did you do and start with that. And I might, by the way, we haven't failed. For anybody listening, we have not failed yet. But let's just pretend. I might say something to the effect of, one of the things that we did come out of the gate is we started on focusing on a PLG strategy, a product-led growth strategy. But the reality is that I should have started with a sales-led growth strategy. And had I done that earlier, I would have actually driven more ARR into the business than what I did. So I made a mistake in that I focused there instead of here. Now, don't get me wrong, I should have done both PLG and SLG, right? But I should have started really the focus in on the enterprise, then work my way down into product-led growth. And, oh, by the way, the market was tough and this and that and this and the other, right? So the other ancillary items that really do add to that, and by the way, contributory. Now, for all of you listening, again, we have not failed Vingresso and Fly Message, but I'm just giving you an example of how I might change that. And if you come and approach a discussion like that, I would say if I was sitting with an executive that I was going to hire and someone said, here's why I failed, and they laid it out, and then I would be sitting there and then here are some of the things that contributed to that, maybe things out of their control. I'd look at them and then say, wow, most people wouldn't say, here's what I did wrong. So what did you learn? And as soon as someone opens up like that, that would be like, I want to hire this person. What do you think?
Yeah, 100%. Look, we failed. My last company failed. We raised $30 million for Circleback, and we failed. We had nothing to show for it. It was embarrassing. We put so much of hard work. I let myself down, my family down, my investors down, my team down. And I actually spoke in San Francisco. I forgot who invited me, and there's a video on YouTube about success is not a straight line, and 8 lessons or 12 lessons, that I learned. The very first lesson was, I, as a CEO, own this thing. I made a lot of mistakes, right? It was me being the first time CEO of building a consumer company in DC, right? We had no business of building a consumer business in DC, because every consumer business that has been built and been successful, majority of them are in the Valley. It's not an accident that the Facebook, the LinkedIn, the Twitter, the YouTube, the Googles of the world are all in the Silicon Valley, because there's an ecosystem, right? Just like my first company was in the federal government space, right? There is not a single company that is in the federal consulting space that's in San Francisco and has been successful, right? All of them have been in Washington, D.C., generally metro area, because we have the ecosystem for those companies to be successful here, right? So yeah, you can watch my video, Success is Not a Straight Line. And there I talk about reasons why we were not successful. And it wasn't because people, if there was people, that was me, right? Not anybody else.
Fair enough. I appreciate that. In fact, there's a slide that I used to use in one of my keynotes about what success looks like and what success doesn't look like. And you've got the squiggly line. We all want it to be that straight line up, right? It's like that, but it's a squiggly up, down, side to side, back and forth, right? It's a tough one, especially market conditions, right? Especially what we went through with COVID, and then we've got a downturn in an economy, but a recession, those types of things. It's very difficult. Well, let's talk about successfully growing a business, building product and building pipeline. How do you successfully grow the business? And for all the sales leaders that are listening out there, Manoj, they're thinking from, look, I don't control product. I'm not a founder. I'm a sales leader. What do we do to be able to successfully grow the business, both from product and pipeline development?
Yeah, yeah. So if I put companies in two buckets. If it's a services business, then it's all about process, people, pipeline, right? Because services companies need to have very, very, very strong processes. Not that the product companies don't, but in case of product companies, if you're going to join a product company, make sure the product is solid, right? And depending upon your risk profile as a sales leader, don't join a company that doesn't have the product market fit unless you're going in with your eyes open that, look, I'm joining a company that is working on the alpha version of it and I'm going to bet on it, right? So depending upon your risk profile, join a company that has the right product market fit. And after that, it's all about having an amazing product, having a differentiated product that the customers find value and are willing to open up their wallets for. And then second is companies' ability to generate the pipeline, right? Because the revenue can be generated once the pipeline is there. Your conversions may not be optimal, which you can optimize over a period of time, but you need to perfect the art of getting the right product and generating the right pipeline. Those are the two P's that, once you have the company culture and the right people on the seat, then it's all about the right product and the pipeline.
Okay. How do I impact product as a sales leader?
Well, as a sales leader, you have to partner with your product leader as well as your technology leader, right? Because if you're in the sales leadership, don't take a job where you have doubts about the company's ability to execute on the product.
So it's interesting. In our early stages of Fly Message, we had our SDR team that was actually converting from a sales prospecting training company and doing SDR development to a SaaS company. And very candidly, they were basically on the front lines of product issue after product issue after product issue, and they'd be on live demos where something didn't work, something broke, a customer said, this isn't working, that's not working. And it was like, a solid 9 months of broken this, broken that, this isn't working, that, so many things that would break. And a lot of times as they came through, it was frustrating. It was extremely frustrating to be on the front lines and be essentially someone, you be there to try to help somebody. That's your goal. Is try to help them, and you want them to buy something. And as soon as you try to help them, the product doesn't work, or the product didn't perform the way it was supposed to. And I remember talking to, his name was Juan, and I said to him, I know that it's hard. I know that you're on the front lines and you're taking a beating. The path to success is not a straight line. It's not a straight line, but you've got to learn how to work through these hiccups. For example, when you're doing product demonstration, don't pick the area that is going to cause the problem. Don't tell a customer to do this unless you know that it's working, right? That's one of the first things you want to be doing, is showcasing that. Or say, if it does happen, crud, we'll get actually right on that. I'm surprised that this is not working, but they must be doing an update. The joys of startuphood, right? So you really got to, downplay that, as opposed to let them see you sweat. And when they start seeing you sweat, then all bets are off. And so that was a real challenge for a lot of new folks that were on the front lines. And a lot of our SDRs actually were early investors into Fly Message. And it was tough. It was really, really, really tough. And many of our folks, they hung through, tried and true, really, really hung through. But I think a lot of folks, when they work for a startup company, they go in and they say, we're going to be big. They get fed the dream. The dream could be there. But in most cases, you're not Steve Jobs and building the perfect product and then releasing. In most cases, you're like Sales Intel, or you're like Vengresso's Fly Message, where you are trying to build a product and you release to be able to get feedback and iterate and iterate and iterate, because you have to start showing customer traction. You have to start building revenue. Unless you've got some amazing Steve Jobs brand, you're really doing those types of things, and it's going to happen. And that, Manoj, for me, has been one of the hardest things to do, is to accept that it's not perfect. That's hard. And I think a lot of sales leaders and sales reps, they come into a startup and they, get paid a nice, beautiful, big salary. And they think that we're going to take this big. And then they realize on their first demo that something doesn't work. And then they get frustrated that it has to take 2 weeks for development to fix, the problem that they found. And now that it happens again and again and again, and by 6 months they're like, I give up. I'm not going to do this. What do you say to people that are in the situation in the early stages?
Yeah, so for both sides, and I've been there. So for folks in product role or the CEO role, right? They have to set their teams up for success, knowing that it's so hard, right? They are carrying a new brand, a new product that's not proven yet in the market. So how do we set them up for success? And then for the sellers who have taken on this risk, right? Because it's an unproven product, unproven company, unproven brand. I'll give you our example. When we launched Sales Intel 5 years ago, we knew in the market we had ZoomInfo, we had Discover.org at that time, 2 separate companies, and RainKing out there. There is no way we could release a product that will have the same feature parity with ZoomInfo or Discover.org, right? So what did we do? First of all, we came up with our cultural pillar, that's progress or perfection, right? So right there, people knew that we weren't looking to perfect the product where we have 1 million contacts that are human verified, because it wasn't practically possible for us to, with the resources that we had, to clean those 1 million contacts. Back then, we only had contacts, right? Now we have 5 layers of data, as I mentioned. We couldn't practically have all 1 million contacts be verified and re-verify every 90 days, right, to go to market. So what we did was we picked a small segment of the market, and we said, you know what, in this market, we are going to be perfect. We are going to be better than ZoomInfo. We are going to be better than Discover.org. And then once we get the traction, then we keep growing. That's a progress or perfection. So our sellers, if they went to accounting as a vertical, we told them, no, we are not good there. Let's look at where our strengths are and let's sell into that strength. And that was one of the things that helped us, not to say that we didn't have our own challenges at that time. We went through challenges, we still have our challenges, but that principle, that value of progress over perfection has helped us grow into who we are today at Sales Intel.
I appreciate that. And so niching is a great way to be able to hone in. The other thing too is here's what I learned. Now, of course, I've worked for SaaS companies, infrastructure as a service. I've ran sales and sales operations, enablement, marketing, etc. But I've actually never started my own SaaS company from the ground up. I did my own service business, which all have the same type of traits. It's really, in my book, it's the same. In VC world, it's not the same for whatever reason.
Nowadays, things are changing, right? They're actually liking services companies that have good margin profile.
Exactly right. So, what's interesting was a lot of people ask me, why did you go to market as a converted company from Vingresso service company, sales training, to Vingresso with FlyMessage SaaS company? And here was the reason why we did this. There were several reasons. One of the biggest reasons why was, in order to be able to take this to market, I knew that I had to use the 800-pound gorilla brand that Vingresso built, which was grade A, top of his class. I mean, heck, Miller Hyman Group, the world's largest sales training company, hired for the first time in their 40-year history an outside sales training company. And that was Vingresso, right? So I knew that I needed the brand behind Vingresso to carry the product. And that is one of the reasons why we didn't convert and say, hey, Vingresso's now Fly Message. Like, that doesn't make sense. The second reason why was actually a total Google digital component. And that was Google didn't know that Fly Message was Vingresso. And so if I had actually converted to Fly Message and tried to drive all the Vingresso domain authority to Fly Message, that would have taken potentially 6 to 9 months. And I would have lost traction then in that regard. So what I had to train Google on, which has now worked effectively for a little longer than 12 months, is that Fly Message is synonymous with Vingresso. So now, actually, I can convert the company, DBA, to Fly Message AI. And now, Google, if I flip that switch, Google already knows who we are and what the products are and where to drive that traffic. We won't miss a beat as we've grown our organic traffic to all-time highs. And so I tell that story because as a CEO, you've got to be thinking about this long-term impact. It was not easy at all in the first year of showing product that kept failing. And unfortunately, I had to terminate our head of engineering because of too many failures, right? And it just wasn't working out. It was not easy. In fact, there was at least 100 times that I thought I'm throwing in the towel.
These are hard. Building product businesses are very, very hard. They're harder when you're bootstrapping.
Oh, absolutely. And you have successfully done that with bootstrapping. And I had, raised a friends and family round. And then we started our pre-seed round. And now we're over halfway committed on our pre-seed round. And hopefully, knock on some wood, I got 2 VCs that are in our data room right now. And we'll close out the last half of the pre-seed round, which, hey, I'm willing to go through this process and figure out what it ends up happening at the end. I already know that it'd be better if I had bootstrapped, but unfortunately, we were in a downturn economy. It was a situation where starting something up in the middle of a downturn economy, when the worst time to start a startup company with the least amount of funds that were being given out to new startups, so I had to do what I had to do, and that's the decision I made, which is totally fine for me.
You'll do well. You'll do well.
That's what I'm hoping. But now we're in a position where we're starting to kick off enterprise contracts. And that's been super exciting because now the product is where it needs to be, is almost where we need to be. But here's the interesting part. And this is what I tell anybody who wants to work for a startup. You find all of the problems that you have and disclose it to the company. Because when you do that, you now neutralize any potential problems that you might have. And I think a lot of sales leaders and sellers, they don't want to tell about the zits. So as an example, we closed the last couple of enterprise contracts, did a 100-user global deployment of Fly Message for their prospectors. And I was very clear before they signed the contract. Hey, we went through this process. They want to understand the use cases, this, that, and the other. I said, all right, now that you understand, there are 2 problems that I want you to know that we have. And they're like, okay, what are they? Problem number 1, reporting is not available except by once a month manual report that I give you. Okay, all right. When will that be available? 120 days. Okay. What's the other problem? Problem number 2. That we have. If you want to add, delete, or a user, you have to do it through email. There's no administration panel yet. Okay, I can live with that, right? Because what they were now bought off on is all the positives that we focused in on, and now you close, and then that builds trust. And that's the key right there when you're in that startup world, is build that trust with that buyer, let them know and disclose it. And I think a lot of sales leaders, when you're in that seed or pre-seed, seed, Series A, you still haven't made it perfect, right? And you are still building out product and features and functions. Tell about the zits. Tell the customer, this is what you're going to encounter, and these are the problems. Are you willing to accept that? Because then if you are, you're not going to cry when, well, where's my reporting? Well, how come I can't No, I already told you all this, right? And it's not coming till this point. What do you think about that?
I think that's great. I would actually add one more to that. When you are seller or sales leader in a startup or even a grown-up company or growth stage company, do not sell futures. right? Don't sell what's not on the truck already, because you have no control on how long is it going to take, unless you know engineering is working on it and it's imminent that it's going to get delivered. Even then, you can't give a timeline, exact date, right? Roughly, you can say within a month or so we will be there, but don't sell futures. So in my previous companies, we have had this challenge all the time. Like, okay, March 31st, we'll deliver this thing. Come April 15th, now you have an unhappy customer, right? You know, at Sales Intel, we've been very fortunate. We have an amazing sales leader and revenue leader. You know, a veteran, comes from the space, Mike Levy. And one among many, many qualities he has is one quality: he will never let his organization sell futures, right? And that makes life so much easier for the rest of the organization, like the product, the engineering, the delivery organization becomes so much easier. And then sellers, they get conditioned. You know, when the leader tells you this is not acceptable, they get conditioned of not selling the futures.
I love what you just said. The only way that you can sell, in my opinion, the futures is not commit to them, but promise that you're aware of it and that the company is headed in that direction. So, great example. We obviously need reporting. I have to tell people that we're going to have this. And what's my timeline? I can't promise it's going to be done next month. I can't promise it's going to be not even 90 days, 120 days, right? That's 100. You give yourself enough space.
There's still a bit more space.
To give that yourself enough space. But to your point, someone just asked me today on a call, well, what about this feature? I said, funny that you should ask that. It actually is under design. We're actually designing that out right now as we speak. But I can't promise you that when it's going to be released. That I can't promise, because from the design concept, now you go into solutions architecture, and then you go into development, and then you still got to get a product out. That could take anywhere between 1 to 6 months, depending on how complicated the product capability is. But as I told them, I can't promise you that that's going to actually come to fruition this quarter or next quarter. But I can tell you it is absolutely something that's been requested, and we actually have it under design right now. So I think that's super important, and never, ever tie a contract to a future product development unless they're putting a multiple six-figure item in the contract to pay you to develop that. And then at that point, all bets are off, which I've done before as well. Someone said we were signing a giant contract with Yahoo. It was a giant contract with Yahoo. And they wanted specific dedicated space in our infrastructure as a service co-location facility. They wanted it done this way. And we said, okay, we can do it this way and build it to your specs if you gave us an extra $250,000. They said, $250,000? I was like, dang it, we should have said 400,000. But we did that. And they built it. And then guess what? Product engineering and everybody reprioritized what they needed to based upon someone paying for something.
Services companies, you can do it. Product still hard because you have a product roadmap. Engineers are working on a 3 to 6 months roadmap to inject something new. In the mature organization, it becomes harder. But in a startup, yes, absolutely.
Absolutely, 100%. Agree with that one. Well, Manoj, it's been absolutely fabulous spending some time talking to you and all the progress and success you guys are having at Sales Intel. Super congratulations. I know when we spoke many years ago, when you were first starting out in the business, we met up in San Francisco. I think, if I'm not mistaken, it was at the Sir Francis Drake Hotel. I think that was our first spot. You were flying out, you reached out, we sat down in that little, it was next to the cigar room, if I'm not mistaken, or maybe it was the cigar room. And we had some time there to chat. You've done a really great job, and congratulations on bootstrapping and building this out. You're a well-known industry player in the sales intelligence space, and I commend you for all of that. But a couple last questions that I've got for you. If someone wants to connect with you, what's the best way? Is it LinkedIn, Twitter?
Yeah, LinkedIn. I'm fairly active on LinkedIn, so please connect with Manoj Ramnani, Sales Intel CEO.
So if you're looking for him, Manoj, last name Ramnani, Ramnannim. Please, when you send him a connection request, make sure that you put, hey, Manoj, I heard you on the Modern Selling podcast. Tell him where you heard him at. Send a personalized connection request only. And that having been said, Manoj, my last and final question to you is, your all-time favorite movie. What is it?
I'm not a big movie watcher guy, but A Godfather is stuck to me.
Godfather it is. I appreciate that. We've had that on the show a couple of times, so don't worry. Others like that movie too. Hey, for all of you listening in right now, don't turn that dial quite yet. Listen to this very important message right now. Thanks for listening to the Modern Selling Podcast. Please do me a huge favor and give the Modern Selling Podcast a 5-star rating and review on iTunes. Oh, and don't forget, if you'd like to save 20 hours or more in a month and increase your productivity, go right now and download FlyMessage, that's flymsg.io, for free. It's your free text expander and personal writing assistant. Hey, thanks for listening in, and until the next episode, good selling.